Episode 3, Baron von Bariatric. Hey guys, this is Baron von Bariatric. I'd like to welcome you to episode number 3. And tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the pros and the cons of bariatric surgery. One of the reasons that I did go with the VSG is, in my mind, it was somewhat less complicated and less complications when it comes to operations. I believe it's a good thing. I mean, it's just me, but that's what I kind of think. And the band, you know, I just don't like the idea of the foreign obstruction inside my body like that. I'd read a lot that seemed like there's a lot of instances of infection related to that. And the whole idea of the gastric bypass, I don't know if you've seen videos of it. I'm going to definitely attach some footage so you can see what it's like onto my blog. Don't forget to look at my blog, by the way. But it is incredibly complicated procedure. The VSG is just basically run the railroad tracks, cut out 2/3 of your stomach. You've got 5 ports, trocar ports where they will enter your body, and the largest one is going to be 15 millimeters, and that's the one that they actually put the camera in the 15 millimeter incision and the 12 millimeter incision, which is not much, it's about that big. That's what they take your stomach out of. Yeah. I've read a lot of data is coming out of Sweden, for example. The 5-year success rate is impressive. It's around 75% at the 5-year mark. There's not a lot of data beyond that just because this procedure is so new, and so they don't have a lot of data points beyond the 5-year mark. But they formulate success as losing more than 50% of your excess body weight. And if you do that, then they deem it a success. So you could still lose 40% of your excess body weight at the 5-year mark, be considered a failure. But in my mind, you really and truly, if you lost 40% of 100 pounds, I mean, that's 40 pounds. That's nothing to sneeze at. But the success rate is impressive. Again, you don't leave a device inside your body. I'm just not a big fan of that. The weight loss, the speed of the weight loss is mind-blowing. In the previous video in episode number 3, I talked about in that first 30-day period, the honeymoon period, you can lose 30 pounds quite easily, maybe even more depending on your BMI. BMI kind of is what drives and that weight loss procedure. The gastric bypass, supposedly you lose weight even quicker. But I was happy with the predicted speeds and weight losses with respect to the vertical sleeve gastrectomy. So I'm good with that. Also, the procedure is pretty darn safe. The mortality rate is really low. It's like in the less than the 0.001 rate. Those are the numbers that I was able to find. I did ask my doctor in the pre-interview if he ever had anybody die, and he said no. He said he'd been doing it for about 15 years. So I guess I don't know. Is that a false sense of confidence? Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. It's minimally invasive. We've talked about this previously, but it's going to be 5 incisions. I mean, they can go up to beyond that, or maybe even less. But in my case, there was 5, and I believe that that's standard. And they range from 15 millimeter for the one big one, which is not big, all the way down to about 5 millimeters. Five incisions, and that is pretty much it. So, one of the questions that come up frequently, what kind of foods can you eat? Well, in my case, what I found is pretty much everything. I'm now approaching the 60-day mark, in this procedure, and I have found that I can pretty much eat anything with the major exception of carbonated drinks. And you need to hear what I'm telling you. Carbonated drinks and bariatric surgery do not go together. It's like holy water on Carrie Fisher. It does not go well. And if you're the kind of guy, I've got one of my buddies who really wants to have this done, but he loves his beer, and he goes, Baron, he goes, I cannot give up my beer. So he is not in a place where he needs to be mentally to press forward with this. And I've told him, I just said, it's not comfortable because your stomach's so incredibly small now. It holds about a half a cup of food and liquid, and that is not a lot of room. And so if you go start expanding that, there's really no place for those gases to go, and it would just get incredibly uncomfortable. I took a sip of some fizzy drink just to see what it would do, and just a single sip of it, I could already tell that it was having an impact on me. It wasn't painful, but I tend to want to test things. But so for me, all foods are great. I mean, I just don't eat a lot of food. I eat 3 ounces of food, a half a cup, 3 ounces fits in your hand. Your typical egg, medium to large egg, is 2 ounces. So you can begin to visualize how small your meals are. And you're just, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. I'm 60 days into it. Right now, as I'm talking about food, I can feel a little bit of a hunger pain going down, but it's nothing that's not manageable, and it's what we call head hunger. It's definitely not stomach hunger. I'm just kind of talking myself into being hungry right now. Minimally invasive, I talked about that. One of the reasons that you don't get hungry is there is this nasty little hormone produced in the stomach called ghrelin. And ghrelin is not my buddy. It's what we call the hunger hormone. And strangely enough, I don't know how intentional it is, but that area of the stomach that produces that hormone gets, for the most part, removed. I can tell you for sure, the first 30 days, I was not hungry a single time. Never. And now, after the 30 days, I do get a little bit of hunger pain kicking in, but it is easily managed. It is not hard to manage whatsoever. So very encouraging on that standpoint. So the hunger hormone, poof, it's out of here. You can always convert your vertical sleeve gastrectomy to a gastric bypass if that becomes necessary. Of course, that's something you'd have to discuss with your doctor on whether or not that would be practical for you. Another one of the factors that I like, talk about the speed of weight loss. Some of the studies that I came across said that you could lose 70 pounds, or 70 pounds was the average weight loss within 12 months of people that had in excess of 40 BMI. I did not have that high of a BMI. Mine was around just shy of 35 BMI. So again, for the guys and gals that are really up there high on the BMI, you should expect to lose 70 pounds in the first 12 months. One of the other things is what they call increased alcohol sensitivity. Okay, so here we go. A lot of the docs will tell you not to drink any alcohol for the next 12 months, next year, and maybe never, depending on what your tolerance is to it. That is not acceptable in my book. And just to be honest with you, I have broken that rule a couple of times. I set my goal at around 2 ounces of vodka, or like a Jack Daniels, a whiskey bourbon type thing. I just love it. And I will sip that over an extended period of time with ice cubes, melting it down. It will last me about an hour. But I can tell you that 2 ounces of whiskey or vodka, you can feel it. And your doctor will tell you that for a fact, that it will it will hit you much quicker than it used to before the operation. Particularly if you're walking around at 300 pounds and you're 6 feet tall. Yeah, two ounces wouldn't move the needle, but it will now. So you have to be careful. There are some studies that alcoholism increases with people that have VSGs, even though I couldn't find any hardcore data to prove that. And so that may be just one of those myths out there. But just watch it. Know what your limits are. The first time you drink, don't be driving. Well, you shouldn't drink and drive, period. You know how that goes. Uber. Do what you got to do. But just be aware, you may be legally intoxicated with 2 ounces of booze in your body. So keep that in mind if you would not mind. Your sleep patterns are going to increase. You just heard me yawn a while ago. It's around 10 o'clock at night. I'm sleepy. But I'm pressing on getting this video in the can so I can get it out to you guys. Your energy levels, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go walk in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning with my darling wife, and we're going to go walk 5 miles at a brisk pace. So sleep, energy, and love. Your love life's going to improve. Guarantee you. Just, I'll leave it at that and let you fill in the blanks. Yeah, we've talked about this before. There's a really good chance that you're going to reduce or eliminate your hypertension, diabetes, sleep apnea, those kind of things. We've talked about that before. Part of your goal sets, part of the why you want to do this is to reduce those comorbidities or those things that can reduce your life or your quality of your life. Let's go ahead and talk about the cons. We always like to save the worst for last, right? This procedure is irreversible. You cannot come back through the door. You cannot get a redo. Once you have this operation, it is yours for life. So if you're not really, really ready for this, turn the camera off now, walk away, and just go back to your old life. You have to be ready for a major change. And if you're not willing to do that, like I say, just close the book on it, move on. Do everybody a big favor. Now, talking about irreversibility, one of the things that is reversible about this is the fact that your stomach is like a big old balloon, and that balloon can reinflate. If you start violating the rules, right, the rules of gastric bypass, and how many calories, how much you can stuff in your mouth, you can overstuff yourself. And if you do that every time you do it, that little half-cup little pouch that your great surgeon built for you or reconstructed for you gets blown out a little more and a little more. 3 ounces become 3.5, become 4, become 5, and before you know it, your stomach is getting close to its old size. Now, how often is that? It's a fairly rare event. You really have to have callous disregard for this procedure for that to happen. So that's why I really want to enforce upon ladies and gentlemen, please be in a good mental place before you press on with this, all right? Let's not have this happen to you at the 5-year mark, the 4-year mark, the 2-year mark. And the 2-year mark is the most critical point because that's where your weight loss tends to stabilize and kind of bottom out. And that's where you're going to really have to work to keep status quo at that point. So yes, you can regain weight. The staples, I'm going to attach a video. You'll see it. There's plenty of operations out there that you can find on YouTube or videos of operations. And it's a big old railroad track. Part of that machine cuts your stomach, and the other part lays these railroad tracks as you go along. It's a pretty amazing piece of equipment. And yeah, those staples can break. You can get infections around those staples, and they will tell you that if your temperature goes up, particularly in that first week or two, get in to see them immediately, because that will be one of the clues that you're getting an internal infection. Those are not to be screwed around with. That's one of the worst things that you can have and is having the contents, the bacterial contents of your stomach leak into your innards. Not a good thing at all. So one of the other things that I'm going to list underneath a con, and it's true, it's the fact that you're going to be on vitamins for the rest of your life. I was never a big vitamin guy. I always figured that if my wife made a good enough meal with everything I needed, vegetables, etc., if she would made a good meal, then I don't need vitamins. Well, now you do need vitamins because you're going to have issues keeping up certain levels, certain mineral levels, and the only way that those can be controlled, honestly, is through taking vitamins. I'll put a list on eventually of the vitamins that I use that I get from Amazon, and they're not cheap. They're $50. I think there's 200 count. I don't remember exactly. I'll include a link once I start talking about the foods. We're not quite there yet. And protein. Protein is a real sucker because for the guys, your doctor's going to tell you around 70 to 90 grams of protein. For the ladies, it's going to be around 70. It can be really tough, particularly in the first 30 days when you're on pretty much all liquids, to hit those goals. I struggled with that. And if it wasn't for some of the power of the protein drinks that I had, I would have never made it. But you have to hit those protein levels because if you don't, you're going to have zero energy. I think it was on about the 10th day I bottomed out. And I got to tell you, it was not pretty. I didn't feel like walking. I didn't feel like getting out of bed. It's like, what the hell happened to me? And then I looked at my food diary, and I had changed some of the requisite meals that I was eating to where my protein went down to like 20 and 30 grams for a couple of days. And I think one day I even fasted. I was not hungry. I think I ate, I remember that for a fact. On about the 8th or 9th day, I ate nothing at all. Just wasn't hungry. But I kind of paid the price for it, so I don't really recommend that. And as always, do what your doctor says. These are just things that work for me. I can't give medical advice, You know how I feel about that. So you're going to have to take your vitamins for the rest of your life. And you're going to have to watch protein for the rest of your life. And you can't drink carbonated drinks for the rest of your life. So yeah, there's going to be some big changes. As I said, it removes 80% of your stomach. That's gone. That means that your stomach now holds 1/2 cup of food, about 3 ounces of food. And I weigh everything that goes in my mouth. That's a little less than 120 milliliters. If you're into the metric system, probably closer to 100. And I'm just saying, if you try to go past that 3-ounce limit, there's going to be hell to pay. You will feel like your insides are going to, what is it? A vulture. They puke back into the nest to give food to their birds. That's what you're going to feel like. You're going to their chicks, you're going to feel food literally welling up right about in this area here, maybe just above the sternum. And it's not a comfortable feeling because I try to exceed because my mom, oh, my wife is not watching this. My wife made a phenomenal meal for us the other day, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go with 4 ounces here. I had a little risotto that I added into it, brought it up to 4 ounces, and it was not 15 minutes later that I was regretting it big time. I was popping the Rolaids. That's become a good friend of mine. If I overdo it at all, or if I find one of the foods that just doesn't suit me real well, I'll do a couple of Rolaids. I'm not trying to give you medical advice. I'm just telling you what worked for Baron von Bariatric. So that pouch is really small, does not hold a lot of food. So I'm going to list that under the con, but that's a pseudo con. That's also kind of a good con because that's why you're in this, because you want that stomach pouch reduced. So there are some very rare potentials, but I think I would be irresponsible if I didn't mention them. They're called acute complications. Some of these can be honestly quite serious. The vast majority of them occur within about that first week period. The first day, the real danger zone is the closest to the operation. Post-operatively, as you get further and further away from the operation, your risk factors do reduce considerably. Luckily, knock on wood, I've had no complications whatsoever, and we're approaching day 60 in the routine for me. So, what are some of the things that can happen? You can have internal bleeding. Yeah, that's not good. Your sutures can bleed. Mine, it looked like they painted. There was no sutures, external sutures, and it looked to me like they painted glue on there, and the glue just kind of peeled off at about the 7 day mark. They said don't touch them for 7 days, and at the end of that, I mean, all it was is just like a scab, but it wasn't a scab; it was glue residue. That was it, and it didn't bleed. There was no pain associated. I will tell you that the pain that I had was located right about in this area, right about here, and that persisted for maybe about 7 to 10 days. And my doctor said that that was actually quite normal to feel a little bit of discomfort. I would say it felt more like doing a lot of setups, that pain that you would have in your abdomen from doing, maybe too many setups. It was nothing. It was manageable, but that would probably be the only pain that I felt in the whole process. Of course, infection, you have to watch infection. You can't play around with it. Blood clots. A lot of people have problems with nausea. They do give you quite a bit of medication that lasts for about 10 days for nausea. I had nothing. I've never been tempted to throw up. Literally, I've felt nothing in the category of nausea. Reflux, I would tell you that I've had it a couple of times. They did discover that I had some damage to my esophagus from previous acid reflux. And so there are certain medications that they can give you. I'm kind of hit or miss on that. I don't feel it. So it's kind of like high blood pressure. You don't really feel it. I probably should be a little more religious about taking my Prilosec, and that's what they gave me. I'm going to have to reconsider all that after the show. Diarrhea, that's another thing that a lot of guys will get. Believe it or not, I was constipated it kicked in at about day 5, and I was constipated for about 5 days. I mean, there was nothing for about 5 days, and I'm sure it had something to do with your caloric intake just dropping off the bottom of the scale. And even to this day, occasionally I will have constipation issues. Nothing is too crazy. I do remember in the 30-day sweet spot, I was taking Metamucil. I would take about 2 or 3 tablespoons of that, mix that into my water, and that seemed to give me some relief. I'm not 100% sure. And as I've talked about, the VSG is not a magic bullet. If you do not have your mind in the right place, this will be a failure for you. Okay? And this is another reason that I'm actually doing this, because it kind of keeps my feet to the fire. If you find that I stop producing episodes, that means I probably failed at some point. And I don't want that to happen. Okay? I want this to be a success, and I want to be able to show off that success to you guys. As always, I appreciate you listening quite a bit. Oh, yeah. Emotional health. That's a big one. That's a real big one. I think some of the females tend to get real emotional about this procedure. I watched, and I'm not putting them down at all. Don't even think that for a second. But I have noticed that a lot of females tend to have some episodes where they get really emotional, whether or not they hit a plateau or something in a relationship changed. But this can be very emotional for some people. Maybe it's why they have you do a fairly invasive psychological exam before the operation, before they agree to it, to make sure you're a good candidate. So I'm probably not the best guy in the world. I'm not the most sensitive guy in the world. I'd just be honest with you. I've had no emotional issues whatsoever. One of the other realities about this, and we just simply have to talk about it, is the following. If you're in a fat family and you become a skinny person, there is going to be a change in the family dynamic. And if your mate or your partner does not choose to go down this road with you, and that partner stays at 300 pounds and you become a 150-pound person, I can assure you that your relationship is going to change. I want you to think about this before you have this operation. Your relationship with your better half, your other half, is going to change, so much so that the divorce rate, I'm not kidding you, the divorce rate after 2 years for people that have had bariatric surgery is 80%. 80%. Now, you have to roll out the 50% of all marriages that are going to end in a divorce anyhow, so it's really an additional 30% risk of divorce. And I would say that the best way to mitigate that is to make sure your partner's along the ride here and realize that there's going to be envy involved if you're weighing 100 pounds less than your partner does 2 years from now. You need to really think about that, and I cannot overemphasize that. I would hate to see a relationship broken up over weight, but it happens all the time. There are the possibility for certain food intolerances. We've already talked about carbonated drinks. Forget about it. You just can't do carbonated drinks. So that's at the top of the pyramid for food resistance. There's reports that you'll develop a food resistance to bread and rice, pasta, and or these food items, and red meat. I can assure you that none of those have become food intolerant on my part. I still love them all. I will eat them, even though I try to limit solid food to one primary meal a day. Maybe occasionally I'll have an egg in the morning for breakfast, but I drink my power drink for lunch. And I save my big meal for the evening. But when I say big meal, it's all relative because they're always 3 ounces. So maybe it's my red meat meal that I save for the afternoon. And we usually eat around 6 o'clock, and I'm done for the rest of the day. I do have some little popsicles that are really low calorie, low carb that I love. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to treat myself when this show's over with. I'm going to go down and I'm going to have one of them. So there are certain food intolerances that you have to work with. Oh, this is kind of a strange one, but it's so true. It's called the Drano effect. And if you ever looked at that there used to be an ad on TV where they talked about, that had this little glass tube where you could see hair and all kind of stuff that was packed in it, and then they would pour something, a Drano type product down the drain, and it would just sit there for a while, nothing would happen, then it would break. So that's kind of what happens. You cannot drink water 30 minutes before you eat. You can't drink anything 30 minutes before you eat. And you can't, and then you have your meal 30 minutes later. So like at 5:30 you have your last drink, and then at 6 o'clock you have your meal, and then you cannot drink for 30 minutes after. For me, it's about an hour. I find that if I try to drink 30 minutes after I finish eating, I'm going to be downing Rolaids. Guarantee you. Almost without exception. So just keep that in mind. This is definitely one of the cons, is you can no longer drink the way that you're used to. Matter of fact, I'll have my wife, when we go to restaurants, which is a whole nother story in and of itself, I will reflexively reach out to grab that glass of water, and she will remind me, nope. She goes, you can't have the water. Matter of fact, I just simply quit drinking water when I go to restaurants, which is pretty rare. Our food bill has dropped so dramatically. It's insane. So yeah, the way that you drink is totally going to change. And we've already talked about the carbonated drinks, no beer, no sodas. Just can't do that. Those are done. As always, I so much appreciate you guys letting me come into your life. It means a lot to me. This is my road to recovery as well, is giving back a little bit. I want you to always remember, believe in yourself. That is my new motto. Believe in yourself. This is Baron von Bariatric signing off. Wish you guys the best. Have a great night.